and check and see if I still had coffee in my mug. It was like, I've got a question.
Yeah,
I thought you answered it, but your sermon made it worse. I'm gonna. No, okay,
I didn't say I made it worse.
Okay, yes.
It re-confused me.
Okay, it reconfused. I know. So, what is your question, Yosef?
Well, normally, I have no problem identifying the connection between the Old Testament and the Gospel lesson. But today, I'm having a little trouble, and I thought in the sermon, the connection was the disgust of Elijah, and after you explained it, the disgust of Simon, because I didn't look at that lesson. But then, as we rolled along, I thought, no, I don't think that's.
It's there.
Oh, okay.
What was our Old Testament lesson?
1 Kings 19.
Yeah.
It's howdy, Elijah,
Howdy. I didn't read that in there.
call of Elisha. And what we have in the New Testament is howdy, Peter,
Oh, okay.
call of Peter. Most of the time, the focus gets put on the second half, on the call. I will make you fishers for men. Elisha gets called in, and a lot of times it can become almost the giant. Let's talk about ordination. Let's talk about the public ministry. What I think is fascinating about both of them is you have two great examples of whining and God not caring. Okay, so why is Elijah in the cave in the Old Testament? He's hiding. Why is he hiding?
Because they want to kill him.
Why do they want to kill him? Who wants to kill him? Jezebel. Jezebel wants to kill him. Not the queen. Queen Jezebel, who should be a defender of the faith, wants him dead. Why?
Because he's,
No, not about.
didn't he refuse to worship Baal?
The chapter before this, chapter 16 is what we think of as the great highlight of Elijah's time. Elijah versus the priest of Baal on Mount Carmel. To where they had the sacrificial contest, and the priest of Baal can't do anything, and they're cutting it, and Elijah mocks them. Oh, maybe he's on a journey, or maybe he's indisposed. It is some of the funniest shade you will ever see thrown anywhere. Maybe your God can't burn this this sacrifice up because he's stuck in the John with constipation. That's what Elijah is insinuating. It is great. Not telling, but if you call and my wife says, pastor's indisposed, or call me back, that's probably what it means. Or ruminating. And then Elijah does his in the afternoon and dumps on extra water, and God sends down fire, and it burns not just the offering, but it burns the stone altar gone, and everything gone. And then what happens? Elijah kills all the priests of Baal.
Yeah.
Takes them out. But then, after this incredible high, word gets back to Jezebel. And what does Jezebel say?
Get rid of him.
Elijah's a dead man. And Elijah heads to the hills. And so he's up in the hills hiding. He has just done the great success, and he runs away in fear. And then what does he say? I've been very zealous for the Lord, and now they want to kill me. In other words, wham, wham, wham. And what does God say?
Get over it.
Not even just get over it. It's worse than that.
Go out there and keep doing it.
Not even just go out there and keep preaching. Go anoint a new king.
Oh, somebody,
Another
get somebody to
king.
take your place.
And anoint your successor. Well, guess we better have the backup plan, so we're going to get, I guess they do want you dead, so we'll get Elijah. Now, ironically, do they kill off Elijah?
No, because he does it with the
No,
volunteer.
but it is get back to work. It is I I'm not saying that as a parent, I appreciate this story so much more so. But hearing the plaintive cries of my children, yeah, that's nice, you still have socks to fold, go back to it. That's what's going on. And you hear that same thing with the call of Peter. Because when Peter says, we toiled all night, took nothing, that's a lament. That's a... What Jesus says to Peter, and I may use this in a future sermon, but it is as foolish as looking at someone who's just harvested their field and got a lousy return to say, oh, go run your combine over that field again. It's not going to do anything. It's stupid. It's just going to... And then there's, oh, look, suddenly now we're doing 500 bushels of corn. How did this work? So there is that just ignoring of the lament because God has something he wants to have done. And in both those cases, Elijah and Peter aren't seeing what God is at work doing. And God says, look, I'm working here. You're coming along for the ride. So that is the connection. So does that work for the connection, Joe?
Yes,
Okay.
and thank you.
So a double connection. And then, of course, the tie into the epistle. What's the epistle? I'll get to the end in 1 second. The foolishness of God from Corinthians. Seek signs, seek wisdom. What God says in both these cases seems utterly foolish to anyone who's in Elijah or Peter's shoes. And yet, fantastic good is accomplished because God's dumbness is better than our wisdom.
And it's a simple fix.
Yeah. God's got it going. It's all good. What do you have here?
This is more mechanics,
Right.
theology, so if you have no idea, feel free to. So he's plowing with 12 yoke of oxen in front of him. Does that mean he has 12 yokes to, like, one behind the
No,
other?
there are 12 pairs.
Okay, and he's with the 12, so that
Yeah.
presumably means there are 11 other people.
Right, in front of them.
Then at the end, when he says that, or when they sacrificed the yoke of oxen, they only did the one yoke of oxen or
Yes.
all 12?
Only the one, only his, because
I wondered about
they're
that.
not selling the farm, they're just taking one kid off the farm.
Just wanted to
Right,
check.
yeah.
I wasn't sure if this was a 12 yoke of oxen
No,
sacrifice.
it's just the one yoke of oxen that goes for the sacrifice. And again, note, it becomes a communal celebration. So,
But then it also said boil their flesh with the
Yep.
yolks of
Yes.
the oxen.
You
I missed that? I was in the kitchen.
That's the fire.
Yeah.
That's what, the yoke is made out of wood. They chopped it up and burned it. To,
it
I
is
thought,
the
what's this, a
I'm
big
not
bone?
doing that.
I wondered why they were doing that too.
Yeah.
It would be the equivalent of not just setting the tractor on fire, but draining the oil out of the tractor to set it on fire. That's not a perfect analogy, but it's, I'm getting rid of the animal, I'm even getting rid of the equipment because that part of my life, that time is done. I'm not farming anymore. I'm called to
Okay.
this. Which is why you get that language of you can't take up and then look back. Because again, well, all right, if I'm preaching with half a mind to jump back into doing whatever I did before I got here, what's going to happen the first time something comes rough?
You turn around.
Yeah, I'm going to bail. It's the farming equivalent of burning the bridge behind you. It's time to go.
And I thought it was supposed to be adding extra flavor to this.
Yeah.
Well, they always say a soup is better with a bone in it, you know?
That must have been a huge party with two
Yeah.
big animals.
Well, and this would be one thing where it would have been not just the whole family, but probably the community invited. Because that was, how many of you are going to barbecue this 4th of July? Or cook out something?
already did.
It's one of the things where in the ancient world, if someone was doing a sacrifice, a celebration of Thanksgiving, you'd invite the community because, all right, if I want to do a grill, I can grill up enough for my family. Well, that's because we have refrigeration. I have meat in the freezer or the fridge. If it's, well, we want to celebrate, we're cooking up a goat, that's probably more than the 3 of us, or 4. I say 3 because Amber can beat it. through 30.
For the tabernacle, he made boards of acacia wood, standing upright. The length of each board was 10 cubits, and the width of each board a cubit and a half. Each board had 2 tenons for binding one to another. Thus he made for all the boards of the tabernacle. And he made boards for the tabernacle, 20 boards for the south side. 40 sockets of silver he made go under the 20 boards, 2 sockets under each of the boards for its 2 tenons. And for the other side of the tabernacle, the north side, he made 20 boards, and their 40 sockets of silver, 2 sockets under each of the boards. For the west side of the tabernacle, he made 6 boards. He also made 2 boards for the 2 back corners of the tabernacle. And they were coupled at the bottom and coupled together at the top by 1 ring. Thus he made both of them for the 2 corners. So there were 8 boards and their sockets, 16 sockets of silver, 2 sockets under each of the boards.
All right. So what's being described there, those of you who are more mechanical than I am?
Portable fitted pieces.
Portable fitted pieces. And so what you're getting here is, why are you having all this description laid out? Why don't you just say, and they built the tabernacle?
So you understand that it can be taken apart and reassembled.
One, not just that it can be, but how. Because this is also being recorded for future generations. So it's setting up, it's the blueprints. It's setting up the blueprints in case there's damage, wear, what have you. Any part that can be reconstructed, and you're setting up the blueprints for. So, and also, okay.
Sidebar question, so when they built the temple, did they get rid of these pieces? I don't know. Or did they have a storage room with all these pieces for the tabernacle? Does it say in the Bible? I mean, I don't know.
I do not know.
That's fine, I mean-
don't know if it says anywhere, but I don't, because when
Because you know, all churches save stuff, and this is pretty dang important.
But they didn't have the church yet, right?
No, but I'm asking when they built the,
Oh, I mean,
you know, when they built the temple.
if your first church building was portable and then you move into a permanent structure, it makes sense to have that tent somewhere in
Right,
there.
back in the-
Rolled up in the corner somewhere.
Not in the holies of holies, but like back. Maybe it wasn't the holies of holies when they put it.
Yeah.
Camping.
Right? So,
I mean, this is the question, I'm sorry.
I do not know what was done. Another place where it might be stored would have been in the king's palace. I could see Solomon having kept it
In the
there.
basement, no, next to the dungeon.
When we first started going to Risen Savior, they met in 2 of the rooms in the high school. And part of the major camaraderie there was the fact that everybody had to pitch in, because you had to set up all the chairs, move them out of this room. They had a portable altar you had to kind of bring out and put together. You had to assemble across to withstand, because we had a very limited idea. And this passage reminds me of that. You know, yeah, we saved everything, and it had to be disassembled and compact enough to put in a small area.
So even though it is portable and easy to assemble and disassemble, it's still quality. I mean, this is good solid wood. It would not be easy to transport. It's not a lightweight packing, but it's something that you can get up and move, and that there's care, there's quality, there's direct. So it's just a good combination of stuff.
Is acacia a hardwood?
Yes,
Yes.
quite hard.
Could you also infer the level of care they took in giving the description, would be also the level of care you were to take with building itself?
This is one where, in a very, very real way, yes. Because we're used to cheap publishing. We're used to cheap paper. You go back even 300 years, is paper expensive?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, books are radically expensive. So just think about how much space this would be taking up 3,500 years ago in a scroll. How much higher should have you get? How much carrier had to get to copy the length of this out. You could just say, and so built the tabernacle, and that would have been good and would have been cheaper to, but no, you're taking the time, the space, the time to read this out. I mean, think about,
You could have just said, and Noah built the ark instead of measuring out all the,
Yeah.
cubic right up there.
but the fact that you take the time to go over that detail shows something. Think about the book of Exodus is 40 chapters long. We're really getting 20% of Exodus is on to, at least, is on to the design and the building of the tabernacle. And that is denoting that there is something important and of value about this. I'm not saying that this means that I should now preach 45-minute sermons so that you realize that there's something important. You didn't even
I
let
had
me
to
finish
say,
my
no,
joke.
I had to cut that off.
And Nikki will have to roll out her papyrus because she takes sermon notes still.
But does that kind of, do you get some of the, because it is something that just, for us today, reading along, if you were just to say, I'm going to go read the book of Exodus, you've got all that wonderful action at the beginning, and then you get to here and you're like, and is it goat or is it sea otter or but it denotes that this is something that is just as important, especially to the everyday life of the people of Israel, as the Exodus. Because for the generations to come, they're not going to go to the Red Sea, but where are they going to go? To the tabernacle. And so, that's all part and parcel.
Well, it also lends to the fact that if they're gonna be moving this thing and transporting it from place to place, you need directions how to build replacement pieces when you break them or lose them or whatever you're gonna do.
Wouldn't that be fairly heavy, really? I mean,
Well, it's gotta be.
the acacia wood, all the silver, and 10 cubits would be roughly 15 feet.
Yep. It was not light, but it was something you can disassemble and load up on carts and move. So it's, you served in the military. There were plenty of things that were portable that you certainly didn't want to have to move.
We had to move anyway.
That's the same thing. That's the same idea with this.
Well, and David ran this thing around all over the place, didn't he, in his reign? Like, wasn't it at somebody's house at one point, and then?
It moves around from place to place till David finally pulls it on into Jerusalem, and then it stays there. But what they would do during the time of the judges, that it would move around the land of Israel. In fact, it had been, when we start 1 Samuel, it had been at a place that's very familiar if you know Civil War battlegrounds. Shiloh. That was the point. And the warning was, I will make your house desolate like Shiloh. Well, why was it desolate like Shiloh? Because that was where they were doing a really bad job of, and lousy priest, Eli's son. Right. And so when it left, it was like, yeah, let's not hang around that place anymore, because things went bad in the temple, the tabernacle was there.
And that's where these instructions like that would have come in
Right.
helpful.
Yeah. So.
But don't you wonder how they made boards and stuff? I mean, like, we manufacture things so easily, and what they had to do to get the things that they're making these measurements by.
We
That's true.
drastically underestimate the skill of the craftsmen of the ancient world. Remember, the folks here, what had been their jobs in Egypt? They were slaves, but what was their job?
Brick making and
Yeah.
pyramid
They were
construction.
Building materials, yeah.
They were good at building. They had to do this. So I mean, this is something that they had been training for, much more so than most of us today. They had been prepared by God for the talent to do this, and they're able to pull it off. There were not many people like me who were unhandy in that group. If you were unhandy, you would have been what?
Like the rest.
Dead.
Rolling both?
All right.
Where is the tabernacle?
Where is But we're getting to the ark, but we don't know what happened. It gets replaced by the Temple of Solomon. So
But the pieces have been used to build the Temple of Solomon. I know a lot of times you would incorporate, I don't know in this case if that would have been proper,
possibly, I don't know.
but it's not something that would have been,
But a lot of it goes away. The tabernacle is replaced by Solomon's temple, which then is destroyed and is rebuilt and replaced by the second temple. Which is why, what's the thing that Jesus says that gets him killed? What's the charge they agree on?
He's gonna
Rebuild the temple in 3 days.
Tear down this temple and I'll rebuild in 3. That's because where is the temple? All right, 1 John 1:14. Someone go to 1 John. When would we read John 1 through 18? What day of the year? Christmas Day. This is the reading for Christmas Day. And sometimes they just drop it off at 14, but I like reading all the way through 18. And John 1, in the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God. And this is that whole culmination. The high point of that whole beginning of John is John 1:14. And what is John 1:14?
I thought you said 1 John, so I was.
Did I say 1 John?
you did.
Sorry.
Definitely.
If we say we have no sin, we deceive our people. See, I'm making you look it up, even though I haven't.
And the word became flesh.
And the Word became flesh and what?
Dwelled among us.
Now this word dwelt is one that you know. You know this word in Greek.
Tabernacle.
It is the verbal form of skene. What is that? Scene. What's a scene?
The spectacle.
It's actually the Greek word for tent, which is based off of also our word for skin. Because what did you build a tent out of? And in fact, if you were putting on a play, what's a scene?
Segment.
It's the background, and so when you move to a different scene, you move to a different tent that you've painted with pictures. So these are all related words. The Word became flesh and he tented, he tabernacled among us. So where's the tabernacle, Maggie?
In us.
Jesus.
Yes.
Not just us, but keep it on Jesus. And so we are stones of the temple of God, not just ourselves.
You just think of the tabernacle and me and a gun to
Now, for where is the ark, the predominant options are threefold. The neat story is that it's off in Ethiopia, and that's one of the traditional claims. And there's some rationality for that, because Ethiopia has a long history of Judaism and Christianity. Why? Where does the connection between Ethiopia and Judaism kick in?
Well, the
Solomon's.
Ethiopian was in the card and was asking on how I can understand.
But why did the Ethiopian official have a copy of the scroll of Isaiah?
I'm thinking, where was he going?
He was going back home from Jerusalem. He'd been up to Jerusalem to worship. What's the connection between Ethiopia and Israel?
Solomon.
Solomon. Who comes to visit Solomon? The Queen of Sheba, which is Ethiopia. And so actually the Ethiopian royal line claims descent from Solomon. Because their tradition is that the king who takes over after the Queen of Sheba is the son of Solomon. And so that there's long interaction between the places. And so one of the pious legends was that they buried the ark out of harm's way to get it down to Sheba, to Ethiopia. And that does make some sense, because from geography. All right. Can I go to the politics of the Old Testament? If you want to understand the politics of the kingdoms of Judah and Israel, here's the problem. All right? Let me. All right. Here's Egypt. Ethiopia is down here, further past. There we go. There we go. Now we're going to read. All right. Egypt is the southern power. And up in the north, you'll have various northern powers, either Assyria or Babylon, and Persia later on. And these two are always vying for control of this whole area. Well, what's right between them? Israel, Judah. So they're right between the two armies. So whenever they get into power plays, Israel and Judah are right in the line of fire. Now this also makes Israel and Judah incredibly wealthy. Because when Egypt and the northern powers aren't fighting, what are they doing?
Trading.
And that means all the cargo is going through where?
Israel.
Which is really good for your taxation and your economy. But this is why they're always in the middle. Well, what you could do is if you've got things down to Ethiopia, that gets it out of the whole line of fire. It's out of the way. So there is a plausibility to that. In fact, there's the one monastery or church where they claim that they have the ark. Well, I think I heard that they claim that it just got stolen in the past year or so. But it's a neat story. The priests who tend to basically no one gets in except one old priest who gets to run it around, and they tend to go blind within a year or two. Their eyes go bad and then they die. So it's a rolling over thing. So that's one option. I have no idea what's going on. Other option is, what do we see in Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark?
It's in our house.
Got buried and hidden somewhere, and it's either waiting to be discovered or has been discovered by the U.S. government, and now we have COVID. Wait. Who can? What the hell?
Well, I'm sure if it was missing like that, buried, it wouldn't be buried in the United States.
Okay, that's actually the fourth outlier theory. How many of you watched The Curse of Oak Island? There are people there who are convinced that's where the Ark of the Covenant is buried, because surely the Knights Templar found it in Jerusalem. They smuggled it off, and the Masons had it. On your favorite Da Vinci Code conspiracy theory. So that's another. I wasn't counting that as one of the logical three. The third one, and probably the most likely one, it was carried off to Babylon or destroyed. Because it doesn't show up in the records anymore. After the Babylonians take over the temple, it's gone. And I think that actually would make sense, because what is the reason that God allowed the Babylonians to take over Judah and Jerusalem?
To teach him a lesson.
But why? What lesson? What had they done that was so bad?
They had quit listening to the scriptures.
No, they were letting idol worship occur in the temple.
They let idol worship occur in the temple, so they had defiled it. So I can see where, having been defiled, God would let not just the temple, but also the ark be destroyed, because it's been defiled. So we need a new mercy seat, a new place for the blood to be sprinkled. Behold Christ on the cross, one that will not be defiled. So that if I actually had to guess, I think it's gone. It's okay. We have something better. We have Christ. We have the new tabernacle, not raised by human hand. We could go into the book of Hebrews in great detail.
And that one will never be gone.
That's the theme that these are for. That what we're seeing in this is an image of God's order and care and his determination to see that salvation is given to his people, and that is made most full and most present in Christ has been crucified. That work? All right, let's finish this chapter. Someone can read 31 through 38.
He made bars of acacia wood, 5 for the frames of one side of the tabernacle, and 5 bars for the frames of the other side of the tabernacle, and 5 bars for the frames of the tabernacle at the rear westward. And he made the middle bar run from end to end halfway up the frame. And he overlaid the frames with gold, and made their rings of gold for holders for the bars, and overlaid the bars with gold. He made the veil of blue and purple and scarlet yarns and fine twined linen. The cherubim skillfully worked into it, and he made it. And for the 4 pillars of acacia, and overlaid them with gold. Their hooks were of gold, and he cast them 4 bases of silver. He also made a screen for the entrance of the tent, and blue and purple and scarlet yarns, and fine twined linen, embroidered with needlework. And 5 pillars with their hooks. He overlaid their capitals, and their flays were of gold, but the 5 bases were of bronze.
I had a terrible thought run through my mind while Don was reading. I thought, I wonder if they labeled these things, like A1, A2, A3. And then I thought of IKEA. And just trying to assemble stuff. So yeah, maybe having the instructions that, okay, is this one of the poles that goes across this way or that? So yeah, maybe okay, is this one of the setting of the 5 poles or the 8? Okay, there are 8 of this length, so it probably, but yeah, it would have taken some skill and they would have let me assemble the tabernacle.
But if those
Who
people
was in charge of assembling and disassembling?
It was the job of the priest.
The priest.
It would be the priest who would tend to the tabernacle and the temple and that was their,
That was their exercise.
well, it was a very physical job to be a priest. So.
I would assume if the craftsman made the pieces, they wouldn't need instructions to put it together.
Well, the craftsman wouldn't need, but I mean, it's still one of the things where.
His apprentice might.
Yeah, but they must have had, their heirs kind of stayed in the same business.
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, you get that movement. It's set up and taken care of. And again, it's done well with care and it's not shoddy. So, Jane.
My side question on this, so all that linen and stuff that they make, did the men have to do that, or did they allow the women to do that sewing?
I would say I don't know,
God, I'm coming up with a tough question.
but I see no reason to think that it would necessarily have been woman's work, as it were.
I mean,
Is
because
that-
we think of embroidery
Right.
and making and cloth as a woman's job, but
And no, I don't think that's craftsman work. But Don could have done it. Here.
With Joanne's help.
It does say earlier, when they were building the tabernacle, that the women who were gifted artisans spun yarn with their hands and all of that. So I imagine it wouldn't have just been women's work, but it would have been.
It's something that the community is involved in as and how the community has been given their talents by God. Okay, let's go talk about the ark. Can someone read chapter 37, 1 through 9?
Bezalel made the ark of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits long, a cubit and a half wide, and a cubit and a half high. He overlaid it with pure gold, both inside and out, and made a gold molding around it. He cast 4 gold rings for it, fastened them to its 4 feet, with 2 rings on one side and 2 rings on the other. Then he made poles of acacia wood and overlaid them with gold. And he inserted the poles into the rings on the sides of the ark to carry it. He made the atonement cover of pure gold, 2.5 cubits long and a cubit and a half wide. Then he made 2 cherubim out of hammered gold at the ends of the cover. He made 1 cherub on one end and the second cherub on the other. At the two ends, he made them of one piece with the cover. The cherubim had their wings spread upward, overshadowing the cover with them. The cherubim faced each other, looking toward the cover.
So there we have the description of the Ark of the Covenant. And as noted before, if most of you have an image of the Ark of the Covenant, where do you get that image from?
Indiana Jones.
Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark. Because Spielberg did a very fine recreation there, a very plausible setup of what it could have looked like. What stands out? Does anything about the description of the construction of the ark?
Lots of gold.
Lots of gold, yeah.
Lots of gold. And
Lots of precious metal, they used a lot of silver too.
again, why?
Well, it seems like more the silver was used as a construction material and the gold was ornate.
I mean, that almost ends up being some of the
Resistance to
Gold
corrosion.
doesn't tarnish.
yeah.
And
It-
wasn't purple the royal color of the,
Yes.
the finest cloth?
In the ancient world, it was incredibly hard to dye things purple in a way that stayed. If someone walked in to this room from 3,000 years ago, from 2,000 years ago, they would assume that Jeanette was the richest person possibly in the state.
She might be.
Because you couldn't dye things purple and keep them, because every natural purple dye they had would run except for one. Off the coast of Turkey, there was a small snail that lived along like a 3-mile stretch, and they could grind up something from it that would make a purple dye that would stay purple. So basically, it was one of the things where you couldn't, it was just insanely expensive to buy purple dye that would stay purple. You could do
Lemon
other
wasn't cheap either, was it?
What?
The lemon that they used.
Not as much, but again, too, they are coming out of Egypt, where you do have more access to a lot of that type of stuff. But yeah, it's care, it's quality, it's reverence. So
Probably 10 years ago or so, when they had all the horrible storms in Japan, you couldn't buy anything red, no vehicles in red, because the dye, the only permeating dye that was really good for making red paint was in Japan, right where the earthquake or the tsunami hit. Yeah, and we couldn't get any part that was made that was painted red, like fire extinguishers and that, you couldn't buy it.
Oh, so is that why they shifted colors? Okay.
Yeah.
Like, oh wow, it's a yellow fire extinguisher. Go figure.
Incidentally, the scarlet, that would have been really hard to get to because they had to crush a certain type of scale bug and only the female of that scale bug in order to get the dye.
There's why there's bugs.
It's like a science lesson today.
I'm
Rick's got
just
good
saying
research.
that if they had like a how it was made edition from 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, it would be fascinating. I'd be horrified, but it'd be fascinating. I don't like bugs. So, any other just thoughts on the ark?
We have to polish all of this stuff.
Well, gold doesn't tarnish like
No.
other
Silver
metals.
does.
Silver does.
They probably let it tarnish.
But it's soft.
Well, the wood would weather
They
also.
probably had more access to silver than lead.
Well, one of the things to remember is, while the ark again is portable, it's not being moved around all the time. It's this is how you can transport it from place to place, but it stays. It's not really designed to be, let's go take the ark out for a walk today. So there's enough for there to be structural integrity in the like.
But you've got 4 rings of gold that you put the acacia poles through, so that's what they're lifting the ark with. The gold is soft.
Yeah.
Perhaps It does mention pure gold lining the inside and the outside,
Okay,
so
so
you don't
maybe-
mention.
Okay, you're right. So maybe it was, yeah.
I know, yeah.
It's one
I thought
where,
of that longer too.
this is one of my just general laments. We constantly, with our modern technology, undersell the ingenuity of the ancients and their ability to master the materials that they work with. You got the Colosseum still standing in Rome. Which is gonna stand longer, the Colosseum or Soldier Field?
Coliseum.
I mean, it had a long head start, but again, it's just the construction techniques that they pulled off. I think we don't get that, we don't understand that craftsmanship. So,
I always, when I'm reading this section, I think of all the gold, because it wasn't that long ago that they made that golden calf, and Moses made him drink it, right?
Yep.
So I'm like, and that was the gold they brought out of Egypt, so they must have had a lot of gold to have enough left over to do.
oh yeah, I mean, it was, they plundered Egypt. And this is again some high speculation, it may have been some of the families that didn't go in with some of the craziness
The orgy,
that
yeah.
kept their stuff back. Now theirs is to be used for a good purpose. So I'm not saying you might look at your cousin and say, yeah, look, there's my gold house. Oh, did it taste good? Oh, no. So, did it taste good? Okay, all right.
Tastes like coffee.
Bitter. All right. Let's carry on to the next little chunk, 10 through 16.
He also made the table of acacia wood. 2 cubits was its length, a cubit its breadth, and a cubit and a half its height. And he overlaid it with pure gold, and made a molding of gold around it. And he made a rim around it, a handbreadth wide, and made a molding of gold around the rim. He cast for it 4 rings of gold, and fastened the rings to the 4 corners at its 4 legs. Close to the frame were the rings, as holders for the poles to carry the table. He made the poles of acacia wood to carry the table, and overlaid them with gold. And he made the vessels of pure gold that were to be on the table, its plates and dishes for incense, and its bowls and flagons with which to pour the drink offerings. Flagons, is that correct?
Yeah, flagons.
Okay, with which to pour the drink offerings.
Now, this is something to note and remind with these rings being put on the table in the ark. Once they were made, they were not to be touched again. So you wouldn't necessarily have to polish the ark all that much because it's not going to get oil and stuff much because you did not touch the ark. In fact, you touched the ark and what happened? So there is that sign of reverence that these things were to be dealt with extreme care, with extreme reverence. So even that table, it's got the things for it because you're not picking it up. You're going to carry it via a pole. There's going to be something in between you and that table when you carry it. So, all right. Okay. We're on a run. 17 through 24. We'll look at the lampstand.
He also made the lampstand of pure gold. Of hammered work he made the lampstand. Its shaft, its branches, its bowls, its ornamental knobs, and its flowers were of the same piece. And 6 branches came out of its side, 3 branches of the lampstand out of one side, and 3 branches of the lampstand out of the other side. There were 3 bowls made like almond blossoms on one branch, with an ornamental knob and a flower, and 3 bowls made like almond blossoms on the other branch, with an ornamental knob and a flower. And so for the 6 branches coming out of the lampstand. And on the lampstand itself were 4 bowls made like almond blossoms, each with its ornamental knob and flower. There was a knob under the first 2 branches of the same, a knob under the second 2 branches of the same, and a knob under the third 2 branches of the same, according to the 6 branches extending from it. Their knobs and their branches were of one piece. All of it was one hammered piece of pure gold. And he made its 7 lamps, its wick trimmers, and its trays of pure gold. Of a talent of pure gold, he made it with all its utensils.
All right. So, think about what you're hearing there describing the lampstand, the menorah, the 75 pounds of gold, hammered, not cut and fastened, hammered, molded and shaped from one piece, all in one, flowing out into all that detail. Do any of you watch Forged in Fire? They do some of the blacksmithing. It's like, oh, they're going to be neat. They're going to build this nice little axe out of one piece of metal. Think about the complexity of having a hunk of gold. I'm going to now hammer this into this lampstand with all this complexity and just managing the way you're moving the masses of metal around.
Well, and they have to cut it and weld it and cut it and weld it and cut it and weld it, so it creates all those patterns.
And they're
It's a
not
process.
doing that at all. It's just,
Yeah.
this is something that is astonishing.
I'm trying to imagine being able to make an ornamental flower with a hammer.
Right. Well, I mean,
It just doesn't go.
Well, not only that, in one piece, not to like piece it
almond
together.
blossom.
so, but are you getting a sense of the craftsmanship and the quality of the work that is denoted here?
How long did all this take? I mean, it had to
Is
take
this why
a
it took
long
them
time.
forever to get to the promised land?
No.
Yeah, they were too busy building this.
This is all done within the first year.
Wow.
So again, this is not the length of the time. They're ready to go and take over the promised land within a year of getting out of Egypt. It's that when they get there and the spies come back and, oh yeah, let's not go in. That's when they're set to wander for 40 years. They're ready to go. Again, this is some very good craftsmanship. This is some, Bezalel knew what he was doing.
So it was the priest who supervised all of this?
I think a lot of it was left to the craftsmen. This is one where God tells Moses, all right, here's the dimensions, there's the craftsmen, I've set them up, let them go and do it. And this is what they did, and this is how they did it. And it's...
Well, you almost have to. I mean, you can tell a craftsman what size to make it, but being the craftsman, there's always a nuance to
Right.
making things flow.
And they're set up, and they have the ability and the talents to do it. So, all right, let's finish off the chapter, and then we'll pause there. So 25, I'll read it. I have it right here. He made the altar of incense of acacia wood. Its length was a cubit, and its breadth was a cubit. It was square, and 2 cubits was its height. Its horns were of one piece with it. He overlaid it with pure gold, its top and around its side and its horn. And he made a molding of gold around it, and made 2 rings of gold under its mold, on 2 opposite sides as holders for the poles with which to carry it. And he made the poles of acacia wood, and overlaid them with gold. He made the holy anointing oil also, and the pure fragrant incense, blended as by the perfumer. So that closes up that there. So
Okay, by he, that's the priest?
it would be Bezalel, I guess. He's the one who's, I think, working on this. And this is how God is setting up his tabernacle to be adorned. And it's going to be quality, and it's going to be well done. It's going to be made with a thought for transportation. Because again, where are we building this? We're building this at Sinai, but we're not gonna be living in Sinai. You're gonna be living where? In the land of milk and honey, where there are many almond trees. That's where we're going. So we will build it here, but it's gonna get brought in where I told you I was gonna put it. Kim, you look like you had a couple. All right.
I do.
By the construction of this, it kind of lends me to believe that the whole community had to participate in this with a function for each one, because to move and set up these pieces, you need laborers. Not only the craftsmen and the linen makers and so forth.
I even note that do not even the best churches and congregations today require a community to pull together. I mean, it's the same thing then as it was today, and it's reading through it. I think you do get a good sense of the scope of the task. That even the tabernacle. Because some of them are like, oh, well, you had the temple. The tabernacle was just a temporary. Well, yeah, it's more than a just that denigrates it more than we ought. So. Any other thoughts?
Nothing had to be absolutely gorgeous.
One of the things that is getting kicked around a little bit more in theological circles, and I've got some of my friends who are working on this, is what's called, this is a fun phrase. A theology of beauty. And a lot of it is just looking at how the scripture speaks of the creations of God and what God does and how worship is described and how we as God's creatures are described. And there really is a value placed upon artistic beauty. And it's something that has been, or had been, I'll say, strongly evident throughout much of the history of the church. If you go to a church that was built in 1600, what does it look like?
Palace.
Beautiful.
There's a focus on beauty. And it's really one of the things that moving through the 20th century, some of that went away. And things became much more utilitarian. You have the advent of, well, let's have this be a multi-purpose room.
These people would have been mortified if you made a church out of a pole building.
Well, I mean, it's one of the things where there's a utility. A couple of weeks ago, I was out at Oklahoma, and the sanctuary there was built in 1908. It was the second one. They built the first one in 1902, right as they started, and it became the school. And so these are dirt farmers in a poor land. I mean, it's not good soil. But you look at the beams, the doorway to come in. They're blocks of wood that are probably, are they 18 inches or 2 feet square? I mean, they're big hunks of wood, but then they're rounded and carved, and just the time and care taken to that. And I'm looking at it like, I don't think we could replace that if it needed. I mean, just look, I don't know where you'd be able to buy the wood to replace it. And even for that little country parish where they're all refugees, they're double refugees, because the folks who went there, they were Germans who had gone to Russia and then had to leave Russia and ended up in, congratulations, you get Northwest Oklahoma. Congratulations, you've got the agricultural jackpot. But yet, less than a decade after they've been there, they build this church, and the building has just a fantastic beauty and attention to detail. And it's one of the things where that's less and less of a thought today. And it's not just for us in the church, but it's also for the community, for society as a whole. It's one of the most horrific things about the 20th century is think about the architecture of the Soviet bloc. Concrete nothingness.
Yeah.
There's that lack of beauty. Because that kind of might distinguish, because what if someone's house is more beautiful than someone else? Then we're not all equal. And instead of seeing all the variety of creation and seeing something to delight in, it becomes a uniform gladness. And the history of church architecture is really fascinating. The history of church music is fascinating. And in so many of these things that we can do things because they're beautiful. Why? What did Bach write at the end of all of his pieces of music?
To the glory of God.
Soli Deo, capitalize that. To God alone be the glory. Because there was an understanding that your service to God was not just, I'm serving God and I tell people about Jesus. No, your service to God is in whatever you do, whatever vocation, whatever gift or talent that God has given you. That doing that and doing it beautifully is done to the glory of God. That a well-tilled field is a thing of beauty, and that's done to the glory of God. That the painting, the decoration, the keeping of whatever, that is done to the glory of God. And that there is, that we should rightly delight in beauty, because we understand the value and the goodness of the God who gave us these things with which we have beauty. I was thinking about music and popular music and such. We hit the Jazz Museum in Kansas City, the American Jazz Museum. And I've been listening to a guy on YouTube who breaks down popular music. And just noting that even in the past 20, 25 years, that the quality, the craftsmanship of the production has gone down. And thinking about going to the Jazz Museum, where I can hear songs that are 80 years old, and they're still beautiful. And it's like, well, what we're producing today, is it going to be something that is beautiful, or is it utterly disposable to be forgotten? And so much of what we do is disposable. I had a T-shirt when I was little. It was orange, and I remember I liked it being orange because it looked really good with my blue jeans. That was a fun combination. But it had a picture of a little kid on it. And it said, I must do something special because God don't make no junk. But again, there's that sense of the beauty, the value in who we are as God's creation, and not disposable. Well, what happens when you make everything for planned obsolescence?
It becomes obsolete. Do you think any of it lends to greed? Because to build a beautiful structure, as you were describing those 18-inch wood blocks and so forth, you can still get them, but it'll cost you big time. And do you think that perhaps this society is more greedy, where they want to use their treasures for something else other than a beautiful building and homage to the Lord?
That's some of it. And some of it is recognition, that we crave recognition and other people's approval. So much of this craftsmanship would never be seen by anyone. We make these lampstands. How many people in Israel get to see the lampstand?
Not a lot.
One priest. How many people see the craftsmanship of the altar, of the cover of the ark? Not even the priest would, because they would do that in darkness.
Unless it was being transported.
Unless it's being transported. I mean, so it's not even beauty for display, it's beauty because, and it was very good. It's a reflection of that. That there's wonders and beauty that is present even if no one else will see or pay attention. Of course there is, because we are fearfully and wondrously made. And you get a reflection of that and how, or a demonstration of the understanding of that in this. And it's something that sounds sadly foreign to our ears. So, for the days of craftsmanship. So. All right, who's all pensive now? And thoughtful. So enjoy beauty. And also, although beauty does not have to be long lasting, there is something beautiful about a nice firework going boom. All right. All right. Let's close up with prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you that we are fearfully and wondrously made, and that in spite of our fall, in spite of our sin, you see fit to be our Redeemer, to be present with us, to allow us to worship you, to call us into your presence, and to receive your mercy. Be with us this week. Give us your guidance, your direction as we live out the lives that you have set before us, as we put the talents you have given us to use in service to you and service to our neighbor. Keep us safe in our comings and goings, and see us again safely into your presence. This we pray in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. All right, thank you all very much.